I'm obviously talking about the crisis in Ukraine, a serious humanitarian crisis. You've got 1 million people now fleeing and claiming refugee status in neighbouring countries. And it really is just horrific to watch what's going on. But one of the things that I've noticed and has really struck me, and I hadn't really thought it through, was the lack of medical supplies. Clearly, this is a European country. People last week were going about their daily business. They were going to the movies. They were taking photos of their family. They were eating out. They were drinking. They had normal supplies of medicine. And of course, since war has broken out, these people are hiding for their lives. They're seeking refuge underground. And one of the big problems that really no one is talking about is there is a desperate need for medical supplies. Oxygen is running out, and there has been an urgent appeal for donations of supplies. They're short of oxygen, of drugs, of bandages, of gloves, and they don't even have oxygen concentrators. These are machines that take oxygen from the air, remove the nitrogen, and then deliver the oxygen. They don't even have tourniquets. And one of the big problems is actually getting hold of prescription drugs, particularly insulin for type 1 diabetics. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Jamie.Lowe, who's a broadcaster. He is an insulin-dependent diabetic, and he's also part of the campaign to get medical supplies to the Ukrainian people. Good evening to you, Jamie.
Evening, David. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. It's lovely to see you. Now, tell me what you're doing. You're in Bristol. Tell me about the campaign you are part of.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of quite positive, actually, from a diabetic community sense, because as soon as we saw the pictures on the television of the invasion happening, I think each and every insulin-dependent type 1 diabetic in the country thought about what they would be doing in that situation. What could they grab and what would they need? And we're finding that a lot of people haven't managed to take with them the supplies that they need, or manage to maintain the supplies that they need to manage their conditions. So as people do when things like this happen, we've collected donations, and quite magically through one company called Type 1 Style, a guy called Charlie, we've all managed to sort of become one, and we're all collecting all of the supplies that we need to get to these people to the Poland border, and they will be going all down to Kent, and then hopefully going off. The first shipment we're expecting to get to the Polish border on Friday, but what we're collecting is, you know, the sorts of things which help people with type 1 diabetes survive. You know, I've got them here. Insulin.
So let me just stop you there, just for those people who don't know about type 1 diabetes. You know, without insulin, essentially, you are in serious trouble and could well die.
Oh, yeah, yes, of course. And we've got to think of those people that are in Kyiv, in Kharkiv, that are underground right now without their insulin supply. You know, I spoke to a lady called Lena, who's from a place in Ukraine called Horlivka. She's been speaking to thousands of people that are out there right now. She's supporting about 6,000 people. And she's saying that people in those cities, the occupied cities, are staying many days underground. And now, you know, as well as you know, if I went more than 3 days without my insulin, I would be in a very dire situation indeed. And that's the thing that we're trying to solve. It's these people haven't got access to the thing that they need to survive because they're trapped. And how do we get that to them? So we're getting it to the Polish border, but then what?
And, well, you say you're getting it to the Polish border. My understanding is you've got some sort of daisy chain operation going on. Explain that.
Yeah, so this is all the work of Charlie from Type 1 Style and his team. So he's, you know, he runs a sort of a company which sells diabetic accessories. He's used to logistics. And the way that he explained it to me was there is a daisy chain system. So human volunteers will be passing it from one person to one person to one person, getting it a little stage closer each time. And then the difficult part is when we get to that Polish border. So the way that Charlie described it to me is that in logistics, the last mile is the most difficult part of the delivery. You can get something to Bristol, but get it to a specific postcode in Bristol, that's the difficult part. Now, he's tackling that in the sense that he's getting it to Eastern Europe. Now he's got to get it into a war zone, and that's the thing that we're trying our best to tackle, and that's why we need these humanitarian corridors.
And of course, you know, you're not just getting it into Ukraine. You've got to find the people who need it, and many of them, as I said, are sheltering underground. We've got 1 million who are now fleeing the country. This is a huge logistical exercise.
Yeah, and that's what Lena, who I spoke to today, is doing. She is a Ukrainian, a type 1 diabetic herself. She lives in York, and she's as well as you will know, with being a doctor, there are different types of insulin, different types of insulin-dependent diabetes, which all need a different sort of program or method of treatment. So what she is doing is using her knowledge as someone with type 1 diabetes to sort of utilize whatever's getting there in the best way possible. So what she is doing, and also Type 1 Style, is responding to requests. I shared some with you earlier. People need to request specific insulin. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to manage their type 1 diabetes successfully. And you've got to also take into account that these people are walking hundreds of kilometers under immense stress, and the emotional toll of living in a war zone must be doing an absolute number on their blood sugar levels.
Well, of course, and not knowing whether they're eating, what they're eating, and when they're going to eat, of course. Yeah. And one of the other things that struck me from our conversation earlier was the fact that actually they can't even monitor their own blood glucose because they simply don't have the equipment to do that as well. So they're guessing, and that in itself is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, and I think that's why we might be seeing a lot of people with type 1 diabetes staying in situ, because it might be too daunting to get up, leave, because if your refrigerator's still working, you've still got an insulin supply, but you might also still be in the risk of remaining in a war zone. And another quite heart-rending thing that I heard from Lena today is that people with type 1 diabetes, I think, as far as I understand, are eligible for evacuation from Ukraine, but a lot of them, especially the younger people, are staying there to fight. So that's why all of us here in the UK are doing our absolute best to sort of bluster past the bureaucracy and get it to them as quick as we can.
I mean, it's an extraordinary story of people power and people rallying round. And the response in Bristol and around the country, I assume, has been quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, I only got round to posting today. I've sort of been working on getting the story out. There's going to be some, videos and all, the stuff that I do coming out on social media across the weekend to help promote the campaign. But Type 1 Style have been doing a great job until now. But the immediate response that I got was so overwhelming. And it's actually quite surprising because I didn't expect this to happen. But so many mums who experienced gestational diabetes recently.
So that's diabetes and pregnancy, yeah.
Yeah, diabetes and pregnancy, who still have an in-date, because insulin goes out of date. There's another issue with the logistics there with keeping it all alive and everything. But mums were reaching out saying that I've got this supply that I don't need anymore. Can you come and get it? And, anyone in Bristol, find me on Instagram. I'll come and get whatever you've got.
And also,
there are many...
Sorry, I was just going to say, just in terms of other people saying that they've got insulin, they can help. How can they contact Type 1 Style?
It's very, very easy. So, if anyone is listening in Ukraine and needs help, there is a form that you can fill out on the Type 1 Style website, and you can request your specific insulin, whatever test strips you use, even Freestyle Libre. People are sending really expensive equipment. People are, sharing the burden of this difficulty. I think there's a lot of sort of camaraderie going on between insulin-dependent diabetics right now, because even me, I'm happy to give up one of my sensors that I rely on, so someone can have them out there. And again, if people want to donate directly, there is a link again on the Type 1 Style website. You go onto the front page. It's, do you need help? Do you want to give help? It's really, really easy to get involved.
Well, Jamie, you're doing an amazing job. I wish you the great deal of success with it. Thank you to everyone who is helping with Type 1 Style as well. Jamie.Lowe there in Bristol. Thank you very much indeed.